disagree on a lot, conservative and leftist policies, but Politicon is kind of a place where people are coming together to have discussions. And honestly, right now with the political climate, it looks like that, I don't know if you think that we might go into some sort of a civil war, some sort of revolution. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's probably too far. I mean, if we're going to go to any quote-unquote civil war, it'll be because the right wing has decided to go fascist and use things like the Proud Boys as their brown shirts. But barring that, I think the Democrats will win the House. Everything will be fine. Things will settle down. In terms of political civil war, you're going to enjoy this. We're going to have one within the Democratic Party. So 2019 is going to be a massive civil war within the Democratic Party. You
mean within like people who are more old school Democrats and then people who, someone like Ocasio-Cortez, who's more socialist in that?
Yes, you know, socialist is a loaded term, but progressive, absolutely. The progressives versus the corporate Democrats. I'm on the progressive side. We helped Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez win. We're super proud of that. We're on the Bernie side, and we're going to take that fight to the corporate Democrats like Pelosi and Schumer.
Okay, what do you think is the biggest fight that leftists are having that they need to win the hardest right now, coming up in the midterms? What is the one issue that you think is the most important?
The number one issue is always money in politics. So that's the heart of corruption in our point of view. And so as long as corporations and the really wealthy can buy all of our politicians, then all we're going to have is corruption on every issue. But if you get beyond that and you're talking about specific policy matters rather than systemic ones, then Medicare for all is enormous.
Do you think it's a good thing then with Trump not taking nearly as much money from foreign investors into these companies and things? So that's kind of you know, taking the money out of politics in a way.
Yeah, so in the beginning, he had a credible case for that. Now, look, I think a lot of terrible things about Donald Trump, right. And I think that it's not that he didn't want to take the money. I thought he was incompetent and couldn't get the money. But then he turned it around and used it in a populist way that is effective politics. So I will give him credit for that. So he went and turned around and said, I'm going to drain the swamp. That's great. If he meant it, it would have been fantastic. He didn't mean a word of it. He's now out there raising hundreds of millions of dollars. So the minute that he actually has the ability to raise money, he loves the corruption and has done it, both systematically, but also for his own personal interests.
When you're talking about Donald Trump and you're talking about populism and also kind of the nationalist perspective that he had when he was running for president, I personally think that being a nationalist, an American nationalist, is a good thing. I don't think that it has any ties to racism or anything because you can love your country without loving the color of your skin. What do you think about that and his message?
Yeah, so there's a distinction, and these are all word games, right? So I'm a huge patriot, and I say that the American flag is ours. It's not the right wing's flag. It's America's flag.
It's not the left wing's either.
Yeah. Well, I think that the left wing stands for American values a lot more than the right wing does. And so we stand for equality of opportunity. We stand for liberty. We stand for justice, social justice, economic justice. These are core American values. So we believe in separation of church and state, and that is in the Constitution. It is core to what America is. It is not a theocracy. So a lot of times when I see the right wing and their anti-democratic stances, they're pro-religion at the expense of secular values, I don't view those as American values at all. So that's where my disagreement with them comes in. But in terms of when you say nationalism, if it means keep out immigrants, then I totally disagree because I think America is a country of immigrants. But if it means defending who we are and the principles that I just talked about, then yeah, I'm all in for patriotism that is based on those principles.
When you're talking about equality of opportunity, I think that the left actually doesn't understand on the right that we want equality of opportunity as well. We just don't always believe in equality of outcomes. We want everyone to have a level playing field, but not everyone's going to get to the same point. And I think the left kind of wants everyone to end up equal, even though it shouldn't always be that way.
Yeah, so that's a total stereotype. I don't know, I know almost every left-wing leader in the country. I don't know a single one that wants equality of opportunity. Equality of results. What they want is equality of opportunities. No, I don't know anyone going around going, hey, we should all have Bentleys. Why don't you give me your car? Right? That's not a thing. So what does equality of opportunity mean? It means college for all. So, and college is a great example. So the right wing has an issue with affirmative action. I actually have an issue with affirmative action. I don't think it should be based on race. I do think, though, it should be based on socioeconomic status, because if you live in a holler in the middle of West Virginia and you're getting great grades and get great SAT scores without any prep that you could pay for, et cetera, then that means you're a killer. You're awesome. And I want to reward that, whether you're in the Bronx or you're in West Virginia, okay?
And it shouldn't matter your race at all. It's your
I don't think
economic
it should.
status. I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, and then finally, the real number one problem with colleges is legacy admissions. Now, I went to 2 Ivy League schools, so I got a horse in this race, and I want my kids to go to those schools, but us having an unfair advantage over any other person is really fundamentally unjust. And so legacy admissions are enormous. I think they're like 40% of Harvard admissions, and that is an affirmative action for the rich and the privileged, and it should not stand.
Let me ask you one more question, just when we were talking about the nationalism and you were talking about letting migrants into this country. But you have to admit that there is a difference between becoming a legal migrant into this country and illegal, right? So just the right wing wanting to build a wall or cut down on illegal immigration, that has nothing to do with race or anything like that. It's just because we want people to come into this country legally.
Yeah, so I'm a legal immigrant, and so we did it the right way, and we waited in line. We did all the things that we were supposed to do. So I understand and appreciate the process, and of course I wish that people would go through it. So the question is, what are we going to do with people that do not go through the process? So if people say, hey, I'm not in favor of undocumented immigrants coming in, there's nothing wrong with that. It's how you say it. If you say it the same way Steve King does, we have to protect our race and we've got to create white babies and make sure that their babies don't take over. Well, that's obviously racist. It's meant to be racist. So I have to call that out. If you're worried about wages, et cetera, well, first of all, I would tell you to look up and not down. The problem with your wages are by the rich that have totally bought all of our politicians and corrupted them and suppressed your wages. But if you have an issue with illegal immigration, then let's find a reasonable fix to it. So, for example, indentured servitude was 7 years, okay?
Right.
Okay, the last proposal that the Republicans didn't even want, they thought it was too lenient, was 14 years of work here before you're allowed to apply for citizenship. I think 7 years, then apply for citizenship, then they've paid their dues. They've showed that they care about hope and the American dream, then I would say that's okay.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Cenk. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Good,
Will.
rational discussion. Great. This is Will Witt, PragerU. Thank you. What's up, guys? This is Will Witt with PragerU. Today joined by the roaming Millennial. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Straight from Canada.
Yeah.
How's that?
It was a long flight, but we came a day early. Went to Disneyland yesterday. Pretty amazing.
Okay. I hate Disneyland, by the way.
It's just
She's also
wrong.
holding my mic, which is very fun. So you were just on a panel, and we were talking before. You said it was 5-1 against you.
Yes.
Tell us about the panel a little bit.
So the panel is about fake news, which is an issue that I think is very topical, has been ever since Trump kind of publicized the term. And, you know, it was a good panel. I think there was a lot of valuable exchanges, but at the same time, you know, Sally Cohn, David Pakman, the writer from the Boston Globe who actually published the Elizabeth Warren piece that ended up having to be corrected. So I do feel like perhaps I was, you know, on one side and everyone else was on the other, but I'm hoping that the people who are listening and anyone who watches it later will at least be able to get a little bit of balance about the side that thinks that fake news is a problem, not just from the right, but also the left, and that journalists, like everyone else, need to be held accountable.
Right. It seems like, though, like you were saying with like the people in the audience, there's like way more young conservative people here, like more conservative activists and just people want to see than people on the left actually showing up. Like the speakers and panels seem to be more centered like leftists, but the people who actually came to see are conservatives.
Well, I think just in general, there's a lot more conservative excitement and passion about these issues right now, and I mean it's because of people like you, organizations like PragerU, and even there was this person, David Brooks, I think he was, on the panel who was complaining that Facebook needs to start censoring conservative outlets who he calls fake news because they're too effective at gaming the system, and it's like we're not gaming, we're just popular. People just like our stuff. Young people are just excited about our content. He thinks that Facebook should be taking us off, but I mean,
that's like what they're already doing. I mean, Facebook censoring posts. I mean, we had our whole thing that happened with Facebook, where Facebook censored our posts, completely removed them. I mean, this is already happening, but it's funny because all these big tech companies like to say there's no leftist bias, it's all just completely fair down the middle. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's Jack from Twitter. Jack Dorsey himself said that he admits conservatives of Twitter might feel like they're not safe to speak out about things like their political views or even how to properly moderate. And so, I mean, I don't think we can doubt that there's a problem. Ex-Facebook employees have come out saying that when it comes to ranking news and deciding what's true or false, that they do have a liberal bias. This is true. This is real. And even if we look at the voices who are getting censored, I'm not part of InfoWars. I don't have any, ship in that boat. But if we look at the reasons why they were apparently taken down, it's not even for fake news, which the left likes to call them. It's for something like targeted harassment. And you just look at them and then you compare it to someone like the Young Turks, and it's like, can we really say that the Young Turks are any more of a legitimate news organization than someone like
I just interviewed Cenk.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm gonna go online and watch that after.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
you have a
sure.
panel about progressive Muslims, right?
Oh, that's the one I just did.
That was the one you
That was
just
actually
on?
really, really interesting.
Because I was going to say, I don't know, maybe we have a different, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but being progressive and like the fundamentals of Islam don't really go hand in hand.
Well, the panel was sort of about like women's rights in Islam and things. And when you talk about the term progressive in the context of the Muslim faith, I feel like has a different connotation than just progressive American left-wing politics.
Right.
So a lot of people would look at me and call me a progressive Christian because I go to a church that has rock music. So as someone who thinks that faith is such an important part of culture, society, and an individual's life, if someone is a believer and wants to practice in a way that doesn't infringe on anybody's rights and is actually affirming in things like where women believe, I'm gonna support them, sort of thing. And so I'm often critical of no Muslims coming out and condemning extremism. So on this panel there were a lot of people who were they call themselves Muslims but very critical of the extremists in their own movement. So more power to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. This was great.
For sure.
Will Witt with PragerU. Thank you. What's up, guys? This is Will Witt with PragerU. Today we're joined by Yasmin Kadir, who is with Muslims for Progressive Values. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Awesome.
Now, this mic is for you. Okay.
Cool.
So you're just on a panel
Yeah.
about misconceptions about Islam and Muslim faith. Could you tell us a little bit about what the panel was about?
Yeah, it was about, misconceptions about Muslims, particularly Muslims in the West. We talked a lot about self-critiquing the community, anti-Islam rhetoric, the difference between Islam as an ideology and a faith, and Islam as politics. So that was, I'd say, the gist of what we were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, I think, I have Muslim friends, I've known tons of Muslim people, they're great people, just regular American people I've known, or people who have came over, immigrated from the Middle East or anything. But then having the faith of Islam, the fundamentals of it, aren't always a great thing. And how do you, if you're Muslim yourself, how do you defend some of the things they do in these Muslim majority countries?
Yeah, I would disagree with that because I think Islam is inherently progressive and Islam is inherently egalitarian. I think the practice of Islam is largely inflated with old cultural traditional practices as well as governments deciding what Islam is for the Muslim community. So I don't think that, when people ask, is Islam a religion of peace? Islam as a faith is a religion of peace.
So, the burqa, hijab, and things, you're saying those are from the government, not from the Quran?
I'm saying those are cultural practices because the Quran actually does not mandate that you wear a hijab. There's things called hadiths, and those are saying things that people have heard the Prophet say or do in the ways that he lived his life. So those are all cultural practices, and we need to take into consideration when we're listening to these things, who's telling these, whose voices are allowed to speak and have been historically allowed to speak, and it's generally middle-aged men. Privileged, wealthy, straight, middle-aged men. So everything is from that perspective. So when we talk about these things, it's how history has shaped itself through rhetoric and people talking about their opinions and putting it out there as the faith, and people follow blindly.
So where do you think these cultural things came from in the Middle East, like wearing the hijab and burqa, honor killings, things like that? Where did that come from then?
A lot of it is cultural. It's tribal. These things existed. They predate Islam. FGM predates Islam. It's not for the faith, from the faith. The faith doesn't say to do any of those things. So they're tribal practices that have sustained, unfortunately, and are too often conflated with the faith for non-Muslims and Muslims alike. There are a lot of Muslims that believe that this is the truth, and it's not. So.
What do you think about, again, correct me if you think that I'm wrong, but about Islam versus homosexuality? Seems to be a problem in a lot of Middle Eastern countries with homosexuality being frowned upon, gays being thrown off buildings and such like that. What is your response to that, as saying Islam is progressive?
Yeah, Islam inherently is progressive. Islam does not condemn homosexuality. It actually doesn't say that in the Quran. And once again, it's the people practicing the faith. Because I wouldn't sit here and say that Christianity preaches hatred, because essentially it doesn't. I don't think any of these religions do. It's people practicing it. So it's disgusting that that's happening and that they're conflating it with faith, because religion is powerful. And when you say that God said it, people are going to believe it and think that it's okay. But it doesn't say that anywhere. And it's all up for interpretation is the thing. Like, people are reading these things and not taking it as living context. They're not taking that it may not be true. And the fact of the matter is that it's all, you get to choose what you believe in.
Right. So let me just ask one more question. With all these people in these Middle Eastern countries practicing this culture that's not directly tied to Islam, why are so many people in these countries practicing this culture if it's not for Islam?
Well, I think we're also, when you ask that question, we're ignoring the fact that a lot of the people in these countries don't believe in these things. There are human rights activists in these countries fighting for progressive Islam and for inherent rights, and they're not showcased in the media. They're often ignored. So why do some of them? Because they're uneducated, because it's driven by fear, it's driven by the government. If the government's telling you one thing, if they're funding schools, teaching people in these schools that they need to believe these things as a faith, they're going to believe it, because that's how it works. It's happening here in America, and we can't even deny that. So it's all, when everything is powered by money and fear. And when you put those two things into an equation, you can get people to do anything. Yeah. So.
Let me ask one more question. I just had one more. It was interesting. Okay, so let's say these people in these Middle Eastern countries, it's not tied to Islam, and it's just culture. Would you want these people to come to America?
Would I want the people in the Middle East to come to America? Well, why are we focused on the Middle East? Islam is everywhere.
So would you want, well, because we were talking about the culture there.
Okay.
So these people who have this culture that's not based on Islam, but this oppressive culture that we've talked about that needs reform, you think these people should come to America?
I don't think there should be violent people anywhere.
Right.
If you ask me how we dictate who gets to come, what's your take on that? How do we decide whose cultural practices are wrong?
I believe that some cultures are better than others. I think that Western culture is the best culture in the world.
Oh, that's so, nationalistic.
Yes, I'm an American nationalist.
I'm also American, and I trust that our country's done many great things, but I can also recognize that it's done a lot of bad things, and I wouldn't say our culture is better than another culture.
What culture is better than our culture?
I don't think it's a competition as to whose culture is the best. I think there's good things in all cultures and bad things in all cultures.
You can take some things, you can take some good and you can take some bad from some cultures, of course, but it seems like Western culture as a whole has made people the most free, the most equal over any other.
Slavery.
No, well, I mean, there's still 40 million slaves across the world now. None of them are in the West.
Okay, but did Western culture not recently just end segregation? Did Western culture not just start this?
There's still segregation across the world now.
How are you going to tell me that's not? How are you going to say that Western culture is better than those then?
Because we are the ones who got rid of it first.
Did we Westerners get rid of it, or did the people that were oppressed get rid of it?
Well, we had an entire north of this country fight to end slavery.
Did we, though? Was it all the people in the north, and was it the white people in the north?
Oh, no, of course not. But, you look now, and there's nowhere else in America or nowhere else in the world that you are more free than in the West.
Who's free? Am I free, as equally free as you?
Yeah, look, you can disagree with me right now. You can't do that in so many other countries. There is no country that has a constitution like America does.
I disagree. I just wouldn't argue that Western culture is the best culture. I don't think it's a competition because there are a lot
the fact that you can say that it's not the best culture is because you live in the West.
Okay, yes, we have freedom of speech. We have freedom of expression. Are those the only things that constitute the best culture?
Oh, freedom to bear arms, the rest of the Constitution. You have equal rights to do what you want, work where you want, dress the way you like. In America, you have all of these rights. Women can go to university and do all these great things.
And that's fantastic, but after I go to the university, am I getting paid as well as somebody else that went to the same university and has the same job?
Yes.
Am I?
Women get paid up to the age of 35.
That's not true.
It is true.
There's a pay gap, and especially when you take women of color into consideration.
Okay. One more time?
And especially when you take women of color into consideration, that's simply not true. Women of color make 50 cents to the white man's dollar.
After the age of 35, you have to account for all the lifestyle choices that women are making.
And why are we making those lifestyle choices?
because women like those things. They want to start a family.
I think that's an extreme generalization, and you're definitely stereotyping as to what women are expected to do.
I think women would choose to do that if they were left. Like, look at Scandinavia, right? What they have gender equality as the number one thing in their society, right? In these Scandinavian countries. You still have 20-to-1 nurses, where there's 20 female nurses to every one male nurse, and 20 male engineers to every one female
And you
engineer.
think that's an inherent thing that I was born thinking, that these women are born thinking that that's what they need to do, that they're more...
Women are more naturally caretakers, things like that. They're more nurturing than men, for
I
sure.
think that was so sorry, but...
Okay. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. That was fantastic. Thank you. What's up, guys? This is Will Witt with PragerU. Today joined by Charlie Kirk at Politicon, founder of Turning Point USA. How you doing, man? So, still a little heated. You just got in a very intense debate with Hassan Piker of the Young Turks. How was that? What are your reactions?
It was fun. Look, I mean, the small amount of time we actually discussed about ideas, I think I presented them in a compelling way. He said that we need Marxism in America, essentially, was his whole argument, and didn't shy away from that description. My best education about Karl Marx has come from PragerU.
Yeah. Thank you.
His ideas and his horrific implementation of Marxist ideas over the last 100 years, and that in some ways I was glad. I was like, okay, we have a purely Marxist defense and we have a free market individualist defense.
And when you were talking with him about the free market at the beginning of the conversation, and he's talking about all the corporations controlling America, he again didn't bring up the fact of small business. 85% of the small businesses are in this country. What do you respond to that? What is your main points with that?
So 85% of the jobs created in this country are from small businesses. The idea of a corporation seems really scary. And the ones that use government power and use government influence to try to lobby and influence, that's corporatism. That's not capitalism. What I love about PragerU is it distills topics that are lied about, commonly, and it was just one after the other. And it's nothing against Hassan personally, but he was saying things that are just categorically and patently untrue and false, and demagoguing them in a way that might seem compelling to certain people, but in reality, are not rooted in truth. And that's what I love what PragerU does. But I'll say this: the distinction could not have been more clear. And I said this at one point. I said both of us agree government is screwed up right now. Only one of us want to make government bigger and more powerful, and that's him.
It doesn't really make any sense if you want the government to get bigger if it's already so screwed up. Why would you want to ever do that?
That's my fun kind of distillation of it. And as you well know, I use that a lot. And you can kind of point to every single sector of where government has grown, liberty decreases, and Dennis Prager, being a hero of mine, says the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. Yeah. As government grows, the citizen shrinks. Yeah.
What I thought was so funny is that he's talking about all the oppression and how so many workers in America are oppressed, and I just hate seeing this, that someone can be up on the stage, or all these people with different opinions here, being able to freely think and freely share ideas. You have that because of the West, because of America.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to minimalize anyone that might be going through any form of suffering in their life, but you have it best if you live in America. Don't make no mistake. And the continuation of the demagoguery that, first of all, he framed his argument. We started very passively for the first 25 seconds. His frame of argument is that we have an inherently exploitative system. That is a fundamentally Marxist idea rooted in zero-sum game theory, rooted in fixed pie fallacy. So that's three big things that I couldn't disagree more, but also the facts are completely contrary to it.
Are you wearing the Yeezys today?
Yeah, man.
Oh, man. Show them. Can you show them?
There you go. Look at that. Those are Kanye West's Yeezys. So.
You and Candace are doing that campus tour. I mean, tons and tons of people are coming to these events. It's awesome.
We have sold out every single one, which is extraordinary, and it's just such a promising sign, isn't it? And I can tell you this, and I don't say this lightly, because most people know I would never say this if I didn't mean it. Before every debate, before every topic, I was preparing for this debate by watching PragerU videos, and I'm going to debate for my one tomorrow with...
He's buttering us up a little bit, but it's okay.
I actually believe in what you guys do. I mean, if it was another organization, I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it. But it's not, and here's the thing that people have to realize about PragerU. The amount of views is great, no doubt, but it's also who is watching them. So if a congressman watches your video and you change his opinion on an issue, that's super important, right? So that's why I think what you guys are doing is so important, and I'd like to see you guys talk about that even more, because Candace and I will sit around, watch PragerU video about police brutality, oh my goodness, I forgot these 3 or 4 things. It's really cool.
Yeah, Yeah, I just had a guy the other day, we'll end on this, who was like a huge leftist troll on my Instagram account, and he came on, he's like, started watching your videos and everything changed. Mine changed everything. So it's amazing what we can do with the videos and what you guys are doing. Charlie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We love PragerU.
We love Turning Point USA. Why can you not be Christian and pro-Trump?
Well, I'm not saying that necessarily. I mean, we know people who are Christians who might not embrace all of Trump's values. So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you can't be a Christian and Democrat. We don't say that. On the other side, no one can judge who in someone's heart. So, but we don't believe that Trump espouses values of Christ. And there's really not one policy action or value that he stands for that is a Christian value.
I mean, pro-life.
Well, pro-life is a tricky, because are you talking about pro-life for all life? Because he's not pro-life for children. He's not pro-life for immigrants. Not pro-life for veterans. Not pro-life for people who are in need of health care.
You think he would be for pro-choice of killing these people?
Are you talking? So you're talking about the unborn specifically, specifically the unborn. We believe that there has to be moderation. We don't think that the extreme is correct on either side. So the far left doesn't have it right, and neither does the far right. And Trump at one point said women should be punished for abortion. I don't think that we want to be down the same line as the extreme countries that have an extreme set on abortion. If we really want to reduce abortions, we should be promoting things like Planned Parenthood, because they actually supply free contraception, and that's when abortion rates go down. We have a lower abortion rate under Obama than we've had ever in this country. So
about the other pro-life things that you were talking about with him, that he's not pro-homeless, you said pro-children, right? Pro-children, pro-people who need health care, pro-homeless people. What do you mean by that?
Well, Jesus talked about caring for the least of these, welcoming the stranger, taking care of people who are poor, down and out, the vulnerable, and the policies of this administration are doing nothing about the least of these. In fact, they're stomping on the least of these, on their rights, on immigrants, from children all the way through veterans. I mean, the GOP wanted to actually take away Meals on Wheels for the elderly that were in. So, yeah, we don't think that any of that is a Christian value.
With such low unemployment now under Trump, I mean, that would be a good thing, or he would be giving these people the choice to something that Jesus might do, giving people something, or lowering taxes so that they can get back to work as well. Those would be Christian values then, or Jesus values.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Low unemployment is good, but how many people are actually able to move up into the middle class? How many people are still having subsidize their income with Medicaid and with programs because they're not paid enough to live? You can't live on $10 an hour. You can't live on $8 an hour. And so we believe a worker is worth.
Yeah, so we don't want people to have, in my opinion, there should be no minimum wage. People shouldn't have minimum wages. The businesses should be able to decide how much they want to pay their employees. And then there's much more competition. You don't have to work for anyone. You don't have to. You don't have to work for a certain company. You can work for a better company that'll pay you more.
Well, if you do that, then if there's no minimum of wage, if there's no minimum expectation of living, then yeah, it's just a free-for-all, and capitalism and the dollar rules, and workers' rights go down. So no, we absolutely believe in a livable wage, not a minimum, a livable wage, that people can actually live and raise a family on that wage. And if you're against the high, debt right now that we have, you should be for that, because then people are going to need less government assistance if they have a livable wage. So.
Before the minimum wage was enacted in the 1960s, do you think people had a livable wage from businesses anyway?
It was much better. If you look on the scale of actually where people were compared to now, and the richest of the rich owning like 90% of the wealth in this country, the wealth gap was much better, but look at taxes at the time. The rich were being taxed at a rate much higher than they are now. So that's one of the things right there that we need to change.
You were talking about income inequality. You think income inequality is a bad thing? Like having a high income inequality?
Absolutely. What we have right now is the 1% virtually owning the majority of all the wealth of all American citizens combined. in a way that's just, no, I don't think that is ascribed to Christian values at all.
Why is that a bad thing?
Why is that a bad thing? Well, because we have special interests able to basically buy politics, basically have way too much power. The power is skewed to where the people don't have an opportunity, but the rich and the very, very, very rich are able to manipulate the system.
Right, no, I agree with you. I mean, the billionaires in this country, lots of financial people, they gave 40-1 to Hillary Clinton in amount of donations. So yeah, I mean, they control so much of what's going on.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, we can talk about the money in politics is a whole other thing, and absolutely. I mean, that's a problem, and that was a Supreme Court decision that just has caused a lot of issues in this country. That eventually would be good to get that reversed.
See, I think you're right, because Trump won because he was against these elites, these people with all the money controlling things. So I think that's why he was so successful.
That's got to be a joke.
That's why the American people voted for him.
That's got to be a joke. I think people voted for him because they were told a lot of falsehoods, because Trump lies 500 times a day.
Wait, like the lies about lower unemployment, lower taxes, less regulation?
You mean that Trump has not benefited the elite? All he's done is put in people that are the elite, that have milked the system and have used taxpayer dollars in a fraudulent way. That's all he's done.
But you have to look at what he's done for the American people. I mean, things are great. GDP growth, stock markets, unemployment again. I mean, trade is finally getting back on track. I mean, these are great things.
Anyone that knows economics knows that this was a buildup from the Obama administration. Right now, we have a deficit that has already grown out of proportion in astronomical ways since Trump took office. So this was he's experienced he received an economy that was growing under Obama. But I don't know, we'd have to see what it looks like in another 2 years to really evaluate what Trump's effect has been on the economy, I think.
Okay. Okay, that was fun. That was fun. Thank you. Thank you. What's up, guys? This is Witt with PragerU. Today joined by Tomi Lahren. How you doing?
I'm great. It's good to see you again, as usual.
You too. I know. So last time I saw you was at Death of a Nation premiere in Los Angeles, and now we're here at Politicon. You were just on a panel with Clay Aiken talking to you, some hard-hitting questions, and you had that lady who came up to you afterwards and asked you that hard-hitting question. How do you deal with the haters who come up to you? What is your advice to people, especially being a conservative in LA? It's very tough out here.
Sure. Well, when someone comes up to me and they have a viewpoint that they want to discuss, that's one thing. When people come up and say, debate me, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to jump off stage right now and go debate you. And
yeah.
It's very interesting now how people jump out of the woodwork and just believe that because you have a political voice that you should just debate everyone. I have no problem having a political conversation with people. I mean, I'm here at Politicon to do just that.
Right.
But boy, you get it all the time.
I know, if we debated every single person who wanted to come and debate us,
Right.
I mean, we would have no free time on Twitter
Exactly.
and Facebook and everything. The midterms are coming up. What is your best advice for turning people who are unsure about where to vote, making them vote Republican, vote conservative? What do you say to people?
Sure. Well, beyond the fact that I don't think that the left, the Democrats, have anything to offer, so beyond a void in that party's ability to market really anything of value, it's not even that they have an agenda we disagree with. They don't have an agenda.
Yeah.
They have
Anti-Trump agenda.
Hating
Yeah.
Trump, or raising taxes, shielding illegal immigrants, and hating Trump. So that's what the left is going to offer you. However, on the right, we've done things under this president that have been great for the actual American in their pocketbook, which I believe, first and foremost, what was it? Is the economy stupid, as Bill Clinton told us, economically. And then beyond that, I think immigration is still a huge issue. You heard me talk about it a lot today. I'm going to talk about it really until I can't speak anymore, because when we're talking about midterms, when we're talking about what are we going to do in the next 2 years of this presidency, and then beyond that, getting that wall, getting immigration figured out. And for those who are in California, guess what? We have an opportunity right now to guard some very important seats, and if you don't like that porous border and you don't like your sanctuary city, you're going to have to get out and you're going to have to vote for Republicans, because the Democrats want to make that even more porous, and they want to make it even easier for illegals to be in this state.
We have half of the illegal immigration population in California,
Right.
which is absolutely ridiculous. You look at San Francisco, I mean, it's the worst city in America right now. And it's like basically an experimental battleground for these leftists to try every single leftist tactic, and they've ruined the place. You know, basically, why do you think San Francisco and these other places in California have gone so bad?
Well, they're a cautionary tale to what it looks like when you not only have incredibly high taxes, when you coddle illegal immigrants, when you have overregulation, which now there are areas in San Francisco that are allowing illegals to vote in school board elections and that of that nature. So when we look at San Francisco, we even look at LA, we look at the homeless population, we looked at unfunded liabilities here in the state, which is crippling our state. We have what, at the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, and we still have high homelessness as well as income inequality. When you look at either the very rich or the very poor in this state, we're losing our middle class. So when we look at places like San Francisco and LA, I hope we're learning what it looks like to be big spending liberals and overtaxing your people, because they're going to leave. Over 1 million people left California last year because the state is not for the average American anymore.
And they're moving to Colorado, where I'm from, and they're
Texas
ruining my
and Florida.
state.
No, that's what they do. A lot of people are like, oh, how is it possible that Ted Cruz might be vulnerable? It's like, well, because all the Californians left California because they didn't like the taxes and the regulation and the illegals, and so they went to Texas, and then they want to vote for the same policies that have destroyed California.
It's like the immigrants leaving the countries that they fled socialism and then voting
Right.
for socialist policies. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, I often say that liberalism is a mental disorder. But
I've
again,
heard you say that
in
before.
California, with AB 1810, there is actually a mental illness diversion program. So now, if you commit crimes, if you can prove that it's because of your mental illness, now you're off the hook. You can be diverted.
Well, it's like in California, they're making everything off the hook. I mean, they're giving out free needles to people, drug addicts, and now they're putting up, like, what is it called, the drug shelters or something?
Yeah,
So-
needle exchange.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous. They can go and shoot up without any prosecution from the law.
Beyond that, because you're in California as well, right? So a lot of the people that are watching this, they don't live in California, and they think like, this California stuff doesn't impact me. No, it does. It should be a cautionary tale. Yeah. When we have things like Prop 47 and 57, when we're reallocating felonies to misdemeanors, and you see all those people, like you said, in San Francisco that are out on the streets shooting up with their needles, why are they able to do that in broad daylight? Well, look no further than Prop 47 and Prop 57. So even if you don't live in California, this stuff impacts you.
Yeah, the last time I was there, I almost stepped in probably 3 puddles of poop and seeing naked homeless men on the street. It's absolutely disgusting.
Well, that's Gavin Newsom's his beautiful area, right?
Courage for a change is what he says. In terms of women voters, Republicans have been polling low with like suburban moms. How do we bring them to vote conservative, vote Republican?
I often, again, as you heard me say many times, when we hear that suburban women or white women are not going to vote for Republicans or not going to vote for Donald Trump, I look back to 2016 and they said the exact same thing, and then white women overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump, over 53%. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's about working to attract certain people. I think that the America First agenda and message attracts Americans, no matter what color you are, no matter what part of this country that you live in, economically. If you're worried about your pocketbook and you're worried about safety and security, you're going to have to vote Republican.
Yeah, if only college students had to worry about any of that kind of stuff.
No, they will someday.
They will soon.
They will someday.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Tomi. I appreciate
Thank you so much.
it.
I
This was
appreciate
great.
it.
It's Will Witt and Tomi Lahren for PragerU. Thank you. What's up, guys? This is Will Witt with PragerU. Today, joined by Tucker Carlson. This is such a pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
We are at Politicon today. So I got to say,
place.
oh my God, it's something else. It's like they're trying to put the left and the right together to work together, but I don't know if it's really working. It seems like a lot of just, people trying to just prove their worth on each side.
Well, one side is making a policy argument. I saw a guy on the right with a shirt that said "Facts don't care," which is true. And the other side is making a theological argument, which is I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And I just find that baffling, since I've never met a good person. There are no good people. Everyone's a mixed
Everyone
bag.
has something that they've done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Are you kidding? Yeah. And like, to the extent that you hide it or pretend I'm a good person, like, you're lying and you're degrading yourself by your lying.
Well, that's the virtue signaling, and especially with this
But
celebrities.
it's just so
I mean, it's
sad.
disgusting.
And it's like the more it's so much better. So I always tell my children, nothing is hidden. Everyone knows who you are. The dumb secret you think you're trying to hide from other people, your stupid toupee or your alcoholism or whatever, your envy, everyone already knows that about you.
Right.
You are transparent to a much greater extent than you think you are. And the good news is a lot of them love you anyway. But either way, just drop it. Just stop the pretense. You know what I mean?
No, of course I know what you mean. All the leftists want to make it seem like they are much above conservatives on the moral high ground, and I hate it.
Like, the whole premise is so dumb. I'm a good person. Okay. I mean, take that up with God, okay?
Yeah, you're a good person, but what are your politics? Do they actually make sense, right? So let me just say, I was on a flight back from Colorado the other day. I was at an event there, and I went to the bookstore. I bought your book, and I read it the whole way through on the plane.
Oh, thank
Finished
you.
it. Fantastic.
I wrote it on planes, so how perfect.
Yeah, exactly. It goes hand in hand. But there was a part in actually the introduction that I loved where you were talking about diversity, and it was
Yeah.
talking about people who aren't. If people aren't similar, is that really a strength when you were talking about diversity?
Well, no, it's the whole. I mean, look, I don't need to have a diversity argument, but if you're going to make it our national motto and replace the old one, out of many one, e pluribus unum, with diversity as our strength, then at least you should explain what that means.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some hidden meaning that I don't get, but the obvious meaning is like moronic. Is diversity as our strength? Is that true in your marriage? The less you have in common with your wife? We don't speak the same language. That's why we're so close. It's like, what? No, of course it's not your. It's neither a strength nor a weakness. It's a state of being. You need a common idea in a country as diverse as ours that holds everyone together and keeps the country from collapsing. And our leaders should be thinking deeply about this, but they ignore it.
I mean, that's what America has always been about. About you come to this country, you have
Yeah.
different values, and then it's one American culture. You know, everyone sets up their different places, and eventually they all assimilate.
But it's very hard
And
to
now it's not
govern
that.
a country like that because you have to make arguments of concern to the broad majority. And that's much harder than just dividing it into warring tribes that you can control by dialing up the hatred they feel for each other, which is exactly what they're doing to achieve a political end, their power.
Yeah.
But they're wrecking the country by doing it, and the rest of us are kind of going along with it for some reason, and I just don't really want to anymore.
They're tearing apart the fabric of this country, really.
Well, but literally, if they're like, this group is hurting this group, fight each other out. It's like, what?
Why?
No.
It's like, why? Let me say, you also have a PragerU video
Yeah.
that is coming out, which we are so excited for. A sneak
Well,
peek for
thanks.
you guys. What
That
is the video about? And tell us a little bit about
It's
it.
just the sort of Orwellian nature of everything now, where we're living in a world that's the mirror image of the world I grew up in, where liberals who represented wage earners and like normal people were concerned about the economic effects of immigration. Why wouldn't they be? It dilutes the value of labor because supply and demand is a real thing, okay? Right. So if you have more of something, it's worth less. And that's true of work. And it's especially true of hourly wage work.
Right.
And so they were like, look, if you let a ton of people in from super poor countries, you're going to make American workers, you know, less powerful.
Yeah.
And so Cesar Chavez and
That surprised me so much in the book when you talked about that. I had no idea about that. So against immigration.
well, he
and
was
talk-
like one of the heroes of my childhood. Like,
Yeah.
you know, in the state of California where I grew up has a state holiday named after
Yeah,
him.
I was just on Cesar Chavez Boulevard, I think. down
Of
over
course,
by
they're all
Olvera
there's a
Street, and it's
college
right over
named
there.
after him. There are all these streets, and you know he is still revered, but he's been denatured. Like
Yeah.
they've taken away everything he actually said, and he's just this symbol, this empty symbol into which they can put whatever sort of current trend they're now supporting. But the truth of the man Cesar Chavez was, he wasn't anti-Mexican. He was Mexican.
Yeah.
But he was against allowing poor people from any country to flood the labor market because it screwed his people.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
That's what you should do. If you care about people, protect them. And he did.
Yeah.
And good for him.
Yeah. Last question. Just, are you excited to debate?
You get me
Cenk?
spun up,
Yeah?
man.
Yeah. Good.
Sorry.
You need this for Cenk. You need this for Cenk. Got to take him on. I believe you can do it. I think you're going to do.
I don't want to take him on. I'm not really exactly sure who he is, but I know he was screaming at people earlier today. I'm not interested in having you're a bad person. No, you are. I mean, okay. Well, I guess we both lose. But I would like to have a conversation about, like, what are the ideas that we should be debating? Apparently he's a smart guy. He's got degrees from all these well-known places.
I dropped out of college. Degrees don't always mean a lot.
Well, you're preaching to the choir, okay? But
There you go.
no, but he's like this impressive guy. I'm happy to give him that. I think he's a lawyer too. So like, let's have a conversation about the ideas, and I'm sure we'll agree on some stuff because we're both Americans. Why wouldn't we agree?
Yeah.
I'm sure we would.
Yeah.
And so I hope it doesn't devolve into one of these, you owned it. I don't want to own anybody. I debate 5 nights a week, you know? I don't need to do this.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Tucker.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here.
I
And we
appreciate
look
it.
forward to your PragerU video.
Thank you. I am psyched. I love PragerU.
Will Witt and Tucker Carlson for PragerU. Thank you.